I don't know if anyone's familiar with the book The Lord of the Flies. It's one of the books that was required reading for me whenever I was in middle school. You know, it's one of those books essentially which found a curious place in the diet that we imbibed in my school. 1984, Wuthering Heights, Kill a Mockingbird, you know. A few other interesting notables I might add, you know. The actual book version of the Holiday Express movie that what's-his-name made that crappy animated version of. So on and so forth. But I was thinking also of this thing referred to as a Pygmy tribe. A Pygmy language, like a Pygmy English, for example. It's a form of native language that's been blended with words from English, for example. And I think about this, all these lovely allusions they used to make in a lot of works, like say for example in the White Wolf works and other ones, all talking about a hidden realm, so to speak. They like that. They like things that portray like hidden things, like worlds within worlds and shit like that. Unfortunately, while some people, like myself, would view that as being a thing of wonder and terror, but like within tasteful freaking boundaries of imagination, quite frequently, you know, Mr. Glug and Chug fucking redneck hillbilly piece of freaking trash that like can stick his fucking like penis into anything is usually thinking about the worlds of cruelty wherein he tries to transcend his stupidity and feel more like a god. Or in the case of fucked up intellectuals that are often their bedfellows and the like, of which there are many, that are wrecked and ruined children of rich men, probably used to pay them because they had a similar spirit. And honestly, if their synthesis of their activities goes back to before the Civil War, when they were master and work hand on plantations, essentially one whipping the slave and one owning them, I could see that dynamic being a very successful one for them. And it would explain why there's such an overlap in things with them. But, you know, all that being taken into consideration, this overlay of English, this considering everything essentially to have a secondary meaning, these strange ideas they used to have, like really strange ideas, like being fearful of being their own age because they'd be made old, you know. All these horrific things I've seen where people were actually physically aged by being placed under UV lamps and shit like that, and were young people that looked old from the fucking neck up. All this horrific shit these people do. I mean, and the fucked up thing is that in certain cases, this horrific shit happens to people who deserve the horrific shit, but you see, they're people who were bred to want to do horrific shit by the people who did the horrific shit to them. It's like a circular thing. I've seen, I used to feel really bad because I was in Colorado and I saw this girl who had been forced in Fort Collins to walk around in the frickin' sun until her skin looked like literally like a piece of leather. Like she went to a tanning booth, was put in there a lot of extra time from what I'm told, and everything else. And do you know what they tried to link this against? An item they stole out of my... They have a big thing about venerating or creating this idea that inanimate objects are like talismans, basically. You know, a talisman in magic, for example, or an amulet in magic, it's like it's like a trinket that's been imbued with, either has like holy lettering or has been imbued with like spiritual power, by the incantation to a god or by some other property essentially that makes it magic. In their particular case, it's literally everything that sort of stands out a little bit, especially if you buy certain brands of stuff and everything else. Okay. Well, what I had was they tried to convince me essentially that like my having a UV flashlight, as part of a kit for freaking, what's it called, for forensics, essentially, which would typically be used also for doing things like finding scorpions in deserts and shit like that, but also for viewing fingerprints, along with a set of like glasses that were orange tinted, or like finding essentially fluids, traces and stuff like that. That was like the reason that this girl got hurt the way, and they were just pulling shit out of their ass. Later, an explanation was given to me that she, being a teenager at the time, and I can believe this, but do I necessarily know for a fact that this is what she did? Because I've seen them do horrific things to each other, I can always believe it when they say they did something horrific to a child. Especially given the shit that you can, when they don't, not aware of the fact that there are people different around them in their environment, that you can get them to smile or grin about in a typical law enforcement manner, which is you just befriend them essentially, sort of, and you're friendly in the way you mimic their traits, and you fucking say shit that's suggestive, and it will get a response out of them because they're bred to that, is the thing. They are bred to that. So, they're also very afraid of cameras a lot of the time, which is kind of funny because, like, there's cameras all over this place, but they're afraid of the phone. That's funny. It's because they're going to be resetting the footage here, supposedly. I don't think that's what they do at all. I think whoever's actually running this shit just keeps everything, because I've seen enough evidence to suggest that. Anyway, so this girl supposedly got this punishment because she had set a baby out in the sun and left it there. Here's the part that they don't say, which is also the truth. Most especially if she was raised by them, which she was. Alright? Where the fuck did she get a baby to set out in the sun? Oh, they provided it to her. That's very, 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 very commonplace with a lot of these people, is they are provided the ability to do awful shit to their victim classes, and then they just keep paying for it over and over again, so someone else gets off on hurting them. And see, I wouldn't refer to it as a symbiotic relationship. It's more like one group of crazy people who's slightly more intelligent and better placed, or somewhat more cunning and knowledgeable of the world, essentially has adopted a fucking pygmy tribe that they rape and fucking like interact with and breed with, essentially creating some kind of inbred freaking, like, but pretty on the outside group of freaking exploited freaking native slaves that they provide with the ability to hurt one another, and then the people who conquered that pygmy tribe just hurt them for amusement. It's kind of really the way it kind of all works out sociologically, I mean, back in the day, I saw normal stuff. Now, I listen sometimes to them talk, because what they try to do is they try to tie, like, I would say, for example, try to tie all of the disciplines in college into something like intelligence or the military at one point. You can apply pretty much every discipline to a specific purpose or cause, Like, you could apply psychology to the study of artificial life or the creation of artificial life, for example. Economics would probably find its way in there too at some particular point as well, or at least some of the basic theories, although that's kind of a stretch, but there is a way it could be applied. Math most certainly, biology most certainly, potentially, depending on how deep down you're simulating, the concept of life in this case, and so on and so forth. But broader topics like the military, which are very social in their nature and very corporation-like, most especially, you can apply broadly concepts from various fields. So, well, in their particular case, they usually choose little bits of information that relate to their little supposedly unspoken freaking Pygmy culture, and also to doing nasty things, to the victim class, also to their hoarding. So there's just multiple ways of looking at things. Like, say, for example, bringing up an autarky specifically.
179.
It was not the fact that they brought up an autarky, for example,
Touch the item to purchase.
that makes me think this. It's who they are,
Enter your
firstly.
2. Place your item in the bag. 4.
And
Your total is
it's the way they think,
29. Please select your
essentially. The way that I was essentially made aware of at one particular point, which did definitely seem to be the case if you actually tested them enough. Alright. And from what I could tell,
Please remember to take your receipt. Thank you for shopping at Wegmans.
what they were explaining to these people, and this is in the context of the university where you have 20-year students, okay, that never leave, and who are also sex workers in disguise. It's how, out in the middle of nowhere, it's how they're explaining to them, essentially, the concepts of why they sell themselves outside their little tight-knit community, which is something they're doing anyway, but it's like one of those things. It's like, if you keep a person living a certain place and you keep them from learning certain things, they become very ignorant and they don't think outside the box, all right? They don't think about or consider why someone might be telling them a specific thing, for example, all right? And it's like these pygmies are raised in awe of the cruelty of the individuals that hurt them, to the point where they wish to mimic that cruelty, and they're just not very good at it. Follow? So, just like, say, for example, whenever the queerest of them, they divided them. It's like they taught them all this warped shit, it seems, based on what I'm listening to coming out of fucking Tory's mouth at one particular point. They taught them a lot of warped shit, but the biggest and most convenient aspect of everything is even though someone has to tell them something sometime, is in general, they just don't talk about any of it. And they're taught how to smile and lie from the time they're fucking young, essentially. So they are pretty warped things in general. They're very, very, very warped things in general. They debase and reduce practically everything to the same disgusting set of combined freaking purposes and meanings, which make Marquis de Sade look like a fucking humanitarian.